Severus Snape awoke with a start, the eerie quiet of the afterlife settling around him like an unfathomable ocean. He had always imagined death would come with a formidable finality, a sharp ending, rather than this vast dreamlike drift through remnants of the ordinary world he had known so intimately. The graying stones of Hogwarts loomed in the distance, veiled in a mist that softened their austerity, reminding him of a time when shadows were merely tricks of the light rather than companions of his soul. "Come now, Severus, haven't we both had enough of the dreary?" A voice punctuated the solitude, familiar and warm, with just the right touch of humor that always seemed to defy the circumstances. It was Dumbledore, of course, appearing as if from a memory so vivid and bright that Snape couldn't help but feel the sharp pang of loss once more. "Dumbledore," Severus greeted resignedly, holding on to his customary wariness. Yet there was a softness edging his voice, recognizing this peculiar reunion for what it was, an anomaly, perhaps a chance. "You look well, all things considered," Dumbledore observed, eyes twinkling with a kindness that saw through the layers of Severus's defenses. "I wouldn't use well as the word for a departed soul," Snape remarked with a bitter edge, though even that couldn't block the curiosity weaving through his words. "What am I doing here? Still lingering between here and there? This is not the elusive peace one imagines." "Ah, Severus, you find yourself here because there's still a chapter unwritten, a path yet to tread," Dumbledore said softly. A glint appeared in his hand, catching Severus's eyes. It was the Time Orb, shimmering with a luminescence that seemed at once to be fraught with possibility and burden. With it, the call to adventure was unveiled, a subconscious pull that beckoned him to rewrite the annals of his entwined fate. "The Time Orb," Severus whispered, the weight of its history wrapping around his memories like ivy. From ages past, it had been the pivot upon which worlds were turned, and yet it trembled in his palm. "Consider it a gift, Severus, a second chance," Dumbledore revealed, his face earnest yet solemn. "An opportunity to live deliberately, to mold the legacy by which you shall be remembered. It is both a privilege and a trial, as it invites you to unearth the duality within yourself. Not only what has been lost, but what might truly be regained." Severus listened, unmoved and yet intrigued, unwilling to release the self-imposed chain of guilt that had shrouded him for so long. To touch the past, to alter what had been bound by threads of betrayal and love, seemed both an impossible boon and a daring curse. And yet, it was there, the quiet yearning that had always lived beneath his pragmatic heart, now rising with the force of tides uncovering possibilities obscured by bitterness. It was time to answer, perhaps, for not only what he had done, but for what he had yet to become. "This offer, it comes with strings, does it not?" Snape asked, the cynicism born of self-defense determining his words. Dumbledore merely chuckled, his presence alight with patience and a profound understanding. To walk an untrodden path is to learn anew, and what it requires is simply yourself, Severus, your willingness to grasp at growth beyond the shadows. With both reluctance and longing, Severus held on to the Time Orb tighter, its warmth growing brighter as he contemplated the adventure poised before him, the opportunity to redefine destiny within his grasp. It was no longer just the echo of a call. It was, once more, the promise of a purpose only his heart could. The familiar and the unfathomable swirled together as Severus Snape found himself again amidst the chatter of bustling students. An ordinary day drawn fresh from his memories, yet unmistakably alive. As he stood in the corridor, the smell of old wood and the ever-present hum of magic in the air felt both nostalgic and haunting. They were the hallowed halls of Hogwarts, unchanged yet brimming with minute differences that whispered to him of another chance. Severus paused, drawing steady breath as Dumbledore's words lingered like the final notes of a fading song about opportunity and redemption. His heart battled between disbelief and a reluctant surrender to the earnest resolve blooming within him. "A second lifetime," he murmured to himself. It came out with a surprising mix of apprehension and wonder. His thoughts were disrupted by the familiar, clipped voice of Horace Slughorn, stocky and affable as he bustled down the hallway, jovial and keen-eyed. "Ah, Severus, there you are. I see you've decided to grace us with your presence. Shall we discuss NET levels, maybe concoct something extraordinary today? The words were a wry echo of youthful indulgences long past. Snape nodded, the slightest of smiles ghosting across his otherwise stoic face. There was a wild sense of déjà vu in the greeting, just enough to rekindle forgotten warmth. The essence of gratitude intermingled with aged bitterness, an alchemic reaction he had never quite achieved in life. Yet here he was, offered a realm clothed in the familiar, a veritable playground of possibilities. His eyes caught glimpses of laughter, youthful mischief darting through the halls, a burden and a boon that weighed upon him with equal measure. As the day wore on, visions of past trials danced before him, a mischievous Potter, an ambitious yet reckless young Bellatrix, and always, Lily. Her image shimmered in the periphery of his mind, an eternal call that beckoned with gentle, persistent light. It was rejuvenating, intoxicating, a summons both haunting and hallowed. He wandered, cautiously mingling among old faces, students both familiar and foreign, each interaction sowing seeds of warmth and apprehension in kind. Yet there was a quiet, simmering resolve growing within him, a whisper of change that encouraged small actions, words unspoken before, a subtle kindness unfolding beneath the old layers of caustic humor. In moments alone, Snape contemplated the crux of his journey, steering him both shoreward and into the deep waters of his own carefully concealed desires. There would be so much to unearth, mistakes to amend, a past tangled with resentment and unreachable love. It was, he knew, the refusal of the call that loomed after acceptance, the fear of uncovering truths unimagined, unmade. A momentary indulgence to let self-preservation war with self-awareness. And just as it had always been in scattered past moments, a voice cut through the introspection, gentle and encouraging. Change is never easy, Severus, but you don't have to walk this path alone. A tapestry unfolds not with a single thread. The words belonged to a woman he would never forget, whose eyes mirrored the one thing in the world he had cherished above all else. Love unyielding, even in the face of his most formidable inner storms. Lily. With her memory lingering at the forefront of his thoughts, Severus tucked away his reservations, cloaked in reluctant hope. He would embrace this chance given, carving anew the path once left untrodden, emboldened by its promise and the soft specters reminding him that redemption lay but a step beyond the... Once a sour wanderer in the corridor of his own making, Severus Snape now found himself gliding through the heady, golden-lit expanse of Hogwarts' great hall. Life pulsated around him. A scroll of parchment opened anew, lines waiting to be inscribed with the ink of a chance yet unexplored. Even as before, the hall was a theater of shifting scenes, laughter echoing across the enchanted ceiling, candles dancing to the music of animated chatter. Sitting alone in his usual seat at the high table, Severus surveyed the patterns of familiar faces with a new perspective. The Gryffindors, spirited and bold, the Ravenclaws, heads bent over books, Hufflepuffs, forever cheerful, and chivalric Slytherins, exchanging subtle nods. Yet it was not the ordinary details that held his attention. It was the unlit corners that they hid, the threads of subtle longing, the quests unspoken. His eyes drifted, and there, at the furthest table corner, space magically widened by unseen forces of teenage curiosity and isolation, sat the young figure of Luna Lovegood. Her eyes dreamy and distant, Luna seemed to scan the horizon for the unseen. Severus found his own curiosity piqued, a curiously pleasant break from distractions of more foreboding kind. Professor Snape! It was only the voice of Hermione Granger that brought him back to the stillness of the present, her eyes searching his as she moved with cautious determination. "Yes, Miss Granger," he responded, keeping the tone curt though intrigued. "I hope you don't mind, sir," Hermione began, her words a well-practiced blend of intelligence and deference. "But I wanted to ask you about ancient potion studies. I've made some discoveries of late and..." She faltered ever so slightly, searching his face for a sign of reception. "Continue," Snape urged, the hint of a smile curving his lips as he soaked in the determination and a quiet bravery that defined her. As Hermione spoke, detailing her explorations and more, Severus felt a surprising warmth unfurl within him. It was familiar, reminiscent of the zeal that once spilled unabated between him and a certain green-eyed Gryffindor, whose laughter echoed even now across the chasm of time. The pivotal conversations over dusky concoctions and a childhood magic that had set him upon a path once cloaked in ambition, but which had turned to darker shadows. Now, in this vibrant present, each word spoken by eager minds was another chance, a tender connection, weaving a new meaning from threads unfinished. Snape listened, not just to Hermione's insights, but to the pulse of life serenading this second chance. Among the clandestine flutter of diversions and hopes, friendships flourished, stretching across the hall's ancient walls, a vivid tapestry he could only now fully appreciate. Their words lingered, ensconced in warmth born from shared passions, the kind that buds into brilliance under guidance encouraged by what had been long buried. Might he too find wisdom in these moments, drawn from pools of flawed memories and sprouting anew? At the heart of it all was the task immutable, a chance to guide, to extend himself beyond reclusive boundaries, and embrace vulnerable truths in a way first dictated by disdain and bitterness. This brief reconnection was as much a balm to Severus as it was a challenge, a call to step fully into the mission laid before him, one where wanderers became wanderers no longer, discovering within themselves the lanterns of wisdom shed unto others. With the great hall awash in the evening's glow, soft footfalls carried him towards an unexpected fulfillment, empowered instead by the luminescent promise of unseen futures, ready to explore not just who he could have been, but who he might yet become. The castle grounds lay beneath a thin, silvery mist as Severus Snape wandered through the evening shadows, his mind ever present in the throes of consciousness, shifting ever so slightly from uncertainty to resolution. With the renewed rhythm of his inward journey, each step bore him inexorably towards a deeper unearthing of self, the exploration of echoes from times past. He found solace, briefly, standing upon the rocky outcrop above the lake where memories entwined with reality and the reflections of moonlight glimmered in hypnotic dance across the water. It had been here, he recalled, that a younger Severus had often ruminated, escaping the cacophony of teenage life. Now, in this solitude etched with shadows of a life once spent, he felt the pull of the extraordinary world waiting beyond the familiar, the elements of destiny forever whispering a rebour, unfolding secrets, both daunting and inviting. A whispering presence near him brought latent thoughts to the fore, and Severus turned, finding himself confronted not with specters immemorial, but rather a figure seasoned by wisdom and time. It was Minerva McGonagall, her expression both contemplative and deeply intuitive. "These evenings bring clarity, don't they, Severus?" she mused, her voice the comforting cadence of the old and trusted. Severus inclined his head, acknowledging a truth shared by both guardians of Hogwarts' storied corridors. "Indeed, Minerva," he agreed, savoring the bond of shared understanding that required no more than presence. "You seem different somehow. Perhaps a new happiness or an old reconciliation found?" Minerva queried gently, her gaze perceptive yet unintrusive, a refuge of old camaraderies. "A reconciliation, perhaps," he replied, lips curving slightly, willing warmth through the prism of minuscule shifts and changes, as had begun to mark this unforeseen path. "Most wondrous it is, when paths reveal hidden delights," she added thoughtfully, her eyes settling on Severus's with the knowledge that greater resolutions often branched forth in quietude. With her wisdom to guide and bolster, Snape's resolve solidified further, etching this conversation between trusted guides into his memory like a northern star. In her presence, he realized his own willingness to broker acceptance and forge unlikely alliances, all pivoting on his greatest adversary, fear of love unfound, vulnerability unreleased. That very night, as the chime of the clockwork sang a solemn lullaby to the resting school, Severus made a decisive choice. He would not remain entrenched in his own history, not while possibility lay at his fingertips, charged with extraordinary potential. The orbit stretching before him was spiraling infinity, a challenge as profound as the Time Orb itself, a quest to balance and ascertain anew his own intertwining mastery. Drifting into midnight musings, Severus found himself leaning toward the light of renewal, reflecting upon love tempered by mistake, yet crystalline in its enduring presence. It was a gift, and he resolved, resolute as steel, to forge this world anew, tethered by the promise to guide and protect those truths one held closest. Stepping away from the solitude-tinged gatherings of evening mist, Severus moved toward the winding staircase leading back, not to solitude, but rather to where dreams gathered within welcoming light. his courage bolstered through perceived guidance of a timeless mentor, a gentle wisdom that weaved in fragments of all he once knew and all he could yet achieve. To explore this newfound path meant not only embracing uncertainty, but mustering bravery to redefine myth intertwined with tangible reality. His quest, unscripted, yet annotated by desires known only to the heart. With every stride, the journey promised both revelation and recompense. A hero's endeavor unwritten, yet deftly alive with enigmatic potentials waiting for their story to be told.